Today on Lead with AI, I'm joined by a true pioneer in cybersecurity and investing, Ron Gula, co-founder of Gula Tech Adventures. Ron has spent decades on the front lines of protecting our digital world, from co-founding Tenable to now funding and advising the next generation of cyber innovators. In this conversation, we dive into the future of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and animation, and what it really means for businesses, governments, and everyday people. From how AI is being embedded into products we already use to what's coming next in the fight against cyber threats, Ron shares insights that every leader should hear. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Lead with AI. I'm Dr. Tamara Nall. In each episode, we will take you behind the scenes with visionary leaders shaping the future of AI across public and private sectors. Join us as we explore groundbreaking projects and innovations that are transforming industries and making a real impact on people's lives. Let's dive in.
So, hi everyone. Great to see you. It's Dr. T, your host with the Lead with AI podcast. And I am super excited to have this discussion with Ron Gula, who is the president of Gula Tech Adventures. We met some months ago at an event, and his panel discussion was fascinating. So I could not wait to have him as a guest. So welcome, Ron. I'm excited to have you here. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for asking me to be on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get into it. I always like, and our listeners love, to just know who you are as a person. Like, who are you at your core? How did you get into AI and animation and cybersecurity? So we can just see who the heart of the person is.
I appreciate that. Look, I didn't set out to kind of get into AI, but I believe AI is taking over the cyber industry, and I'm really a cybersecurity person at heart. Mm-hmm. I went into the Air Force to be a pilot. It didn't work out, and I got involved in cybersecurity. Got to work at the National Security Agency, got to work at some, basically Beltway bandit type companies out there. But while I was there, I learned how to make products and bring them to market, and I combined my cybersecurity expertise with, bringing products to market. Started a bunch of companies with my wife. The last big one was Tenable Network Security, where I was the CEO of that for about 16 years or so, went public a couple of years ago. And like people who want to direct, they want to get in, there are movies they want to direct. I eventually wanted to help other people start companies. So my wife and I do Gula Tech Adventures, where we invest in cybersecurity startups and increasingly AI and national security companies. So a lot of that has evolved into AI in these last 4 or 5 years.
Right, absolutely. And then you're big in animation too. Talk to us a little bit about how animation fits into all of that.
It's very therapeutic, right? So being in cyber and IT for 30 years and programming, we have a hard time as an industry connecting with other people. It's very technical, a lot of acronyms, that sort of thing. So I really started getting involved as part of our outreach to politicians and students, and like the panel you saw me on. I started trying to take a lot of that content and put it online on YouTube channels and X and whatnot. And I found this sweet spot with animation where you could really identify some amazing technical contents. What does a root look like? What is if you heard of like Salt Typhoon, where China's attacking our routers, what does that really mean? How do people kind of relate to that? But at the same time, as an investor and trying to do startup advice, if I had maybe a founder who I saw on a panel, kind of like you saw me, and they did a poor job, I can't say that this person did, but I can put an animated character on there, and it makes cyber and startups a lot more approaching to people. The interesting thing about the animation stuff is it's adopted AI really an amazing way. I think most people probably use a prompt to create a picture. You can basically pose. It's like playing with your miniature Star Wars and Star Trek figures, but you can kind of pose them, and the animation software just figures it out, and it makes you do Pixar level events. I just love being, as a cyber investor, seeing the AI technology being in use.
Yeah, and I love your animation. I've seen them. I've listened to your shows, etc., your recordings, and it really, really is like you said, Pixar quality. I really, really love it, and I think that this discussion is going to be helpful for our listeners as they, like you said, can tell their story, tell what their companies do, and I think it's amazing how you mentioned you could see somebody or hear somebody on a panel and it was kind of boring or they didn't get the message out there, but then you can help them through some of these advanced animation tools.
Well, it's interesting because I think whether you're producing content or managing your team or talking to your customers, it's hard to be consistent. And whether you're a TikTok user or you're a YouTuber or you're a blogger or you're speaking at a TED Talk, you have to remember who your audience is, what's your hook, what do you want people to remember out of this stuff. And I don't think we do a good enough job teaching the younger generations on how to communicate multimedia. When you're
Mm-hmm.
next to the CEO in the elevator, that's a media. And you need to be consistent with your TikTok post, your X post, your LinkedIn posts. And it's funny how much people forget that they are different people in different audiences. And, we might only see you one way.
Right. Exactly. So let's get into the holy smokes moment. Talk to us about a time where it was like jaw dropping, where someone is first experiencing, your products and they realize that it changes everything for them.
So look from the AI side, that happens every day.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the industry, it's like, oh, you can do a prompt and create a video game. That's reality, right? Whereas like 5 years ago, I was basically saying AI was the 3D glasses of our industry, right? Everybody thinks it's cool, but it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
not, right? But the reality now is a lot of businesses are struggling with do we do it? So for me, the holy smokes moment is we're investors in about 30 companies. We're on the boards about half of them. And I'm having companies basically doing software development and they're
Mm-hmm.
basically saying, hey, I want to hire 10 or 15 people and go build this next part of my product.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be really hiring maybe 3 or 4 or 5 and really leveraging AI to do a lot of that. Now, a lot of what I consider the graybeards are like, no, you can't do that. It's really, but the reality is it's actually a small thing. Most people who code, 90% of what they code is somebody else's library. They're using open source stuff, they're using commercial
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And it's a slight change to go from somebody else's library to having something written by Anthropic, OpenAI, or that sort of stuff. It's a really, really big mind shift because what's going to happen next is maybe the software that we use every day, such as this app that we're recording things on. Maybe you want a better one. You just ask AI to write it someday. That was the jaw-dropping moment for me, to understand that software is going to be like the replicator in Star Trek. You're going to be able to ask for, I want a calculator that does this, and you're going
Mm-hmm.
to get it. And I don't know that we as a society are ready for that change yet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned that, of course, you have founders that come and they pitch to you, and they kind of have this cost analysis. We need to hire 30 people, 10 people, and you're saying, okay, great idea, but far fewer people if you use AI. Give us an example of one of your companies, or and if it needs to be confidential, that's fine. Just describe it, where actually they took your recommendation and they went from a lot of folks to just a few, and how that really helped drive the company through AI.
Well, look, we're recording this in September of 25. Last name is Gula, Gula. You can see the portfolio at gula.tech. Right now, I have some companies who are using AI for their development, but they have not done a massive change to where it's at. Now, what I'm seeing, though, is the brand new companies. If you and I were going to go start a new company today,
Mm-hmm.
we might just hire a few people. But when you
Mm-hmm.
have your development team of 10 or 15 people, and you're looking at these AI tools, it's more likely you're going to move those people into more of a QA point of view, a
Mm-hmm.
customer success point of view. A lot of times in cybersecurity, you have a content thing. I need to update my rules to detect malware, right? That's a
Right.
very common type of thing. And that stuff, you really don't want to have that CrowdStrike moment, right? Where you push out an update and you impact airlines and things like that.
Right.
So what I'm seeing in cyber is that, there's more and more code being written by AI, but I haven't it's funny. A lot of people think that the VCs come in, oh, you got to cut costs and stuff like that. The reality is, you're talking about your cost model every day.
Hey,
And
right.
maybe with the AI stuff, you're just not going to see somebody say, oh, I'm going to fire all my developers and code it 100% with AI. You're probably not going to hire your next 25 developers. Maybe you're going to hire 2 or 3 if you're adopting this AI thing. And that's what I'm seeing people do.
Got it. Now let's dig a little bit more into the animation that you are all on top of. If we were to open up the hood, how does it all work? Can you share some of the tools that you use to get this Pixar, rated quality? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it is really fascinating. I mean, I love your content.
So I think it's therapeutic for me to try to use animation to kind of convey things like CMMC compliance, right? So it's really interesting. Now, I'm not going to go out and hire a cast to do stand-up sketch comedy, but that's a lot of what we end up doing with animation to make it relatable and reliable, right? So we use a couple different products, but I think what I want to just remind people is we're recording this in September of 25. 6 months from now, the
Could be
state of
something
the
else.
art could be changed completely,
Right.
right? But here's kind of where we're at from an animation communication point of view. If you're typing stuff into a prompt and getting a video, such as Google VO and that sort of things, your videos are limited in length, which means you have to do very, very short clips. And if you've seen anything on YouTube, like Bigfoot or the alien videos, if you notice, they're like really, really short clips. And if
That's
you
true.
just wanted to do a sketch of like 2 people in an elevator talking, you have to really be clever about doing that. And that's really cool. What I like about the animation is you actually have full control over the camera, the characters, the script, and then you can bring in AI to help you with any of that, right? You can ask ChatGPT to help write it. The tool that we use is a company called Replicate. Now, it's one of our portfolio companies. We are an investor, full disclosure. But
Okay.
again, if you want to sit there and have people talking and communicating, you can do that. So, for example, we took a Sinfeld theme thing. We did a parody of it called Seinfeld. So instead of cybersecurity, it's Seinfeld. Done about 11 episodes. Every one of those episodes has a thought about cybersecurity or, maybe the over reliance on AI, that sort of thing. So that's a lot of fun. But at the same time, we've also done personal stuff, such as I have a young African-American woman interviewing with a army recruiter from Cyber Command. She wants to be a tank driver. And he's like, haven't you thought about, killing people with packets at Cyber Command? Right. So it's that kind of sketch comedy type stuff. What I would encourage people in this day and age of just over much content that's out there is that, look, these AI tools can really help you kind of communicate your stories and make it a lot more personal. Even if you're using this impersonal thing where something else is doing the animation for you and it's still a very personal and human experience to kind of create with AI.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, how do you think about ethics in all of the AI and cyber? How do y'all think about that?
So it's very interesting. So one of the things, again, I'm going to go back to the replicant. One of the reasons we wanted to invest is because you have full traces of your intellectual property. So when you go to, another chat bot or another AI bot, or perhaps even a Chinese bot might be even the most politically correct way to say it. And you say,
Okay.
make me a picture of a starship, right? It makes a Star Destroyer. Oh, well, maybe you're going to get sued by George Lucas, right? That's basically the big problem with like OpenAI, the New York Times lawsuit, and things like that. Now, from an ethics point of view, I never would have gotten to animation if I didn't have the AI stuff. And I actually just started contracting with my first animator to help with that. So it actually created some work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
10 years ago, I would have had to pay Pixar hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of money
Yeah.
to do the
A lot
videos
of
we're
money.
doing today, right? And the technology has moved on. But the way I look at it is like, look, the cars make us go faster, right? The computers make us type faster and be more efficient, right? I don't have photo albums I have to worry about because I put them in the cloud. Nobody worries about the ethics of that. This is just the next generation of technology. However, the intellectual property I still am very, very concerned about. What are these things being trained on and what they're doing? One of our portfolio companies called Starseer, they actually help people look at LLMs and understand where they came from, geopolitical. What were they based on? Do they have certain inferences that or biases that you might not know? This is a whole new world of cybersecurity. I believe it's the future of cyber, and it's very, very much an important consideration for anybody who's using AI.
And I think the work that they do is so important because, I mean, people can say we're going to be there one day. I think we're already there where AI can produce so much. You really don't know everything on the back end. You don't know how you got to that answer. You can kind of figure out, okay, well, this makes sense, or that's a little off. Let me reprompt it or something like that. So the audit work that they do is really important to really kind of see what's in the engine and how did we get to the result we got.
What I think is hilarious is I'm a huge science fiction fan, right?
Yes.
So Star Wars, Star Trek, 2001, so on. So 2001, you see examples of like the doctors and they call them doctors, right? Who created the AI and they're communicating with them almost like a psychologist. I actually created a 3D avatar version of myself. I loaded up with all my content and stuff like that. But when I'm talking to it, people look at me talking to myself and they're like, that's just like science fiction. You're
Right.
and you're literally asking questions to understand, doesn't know the things you've taught it. And it's surreal for a lot of people, but this is the future that we're creating.
Right, right. And let's go a little bit further on that. Well, one question. So, for your portfolio companies, who are the customers? Are they more than just like defense agencies? Do you have commercial customers as well? Does it run the gamut?
Yeah, from a cyber point of view, there's a lot of different markets. The type of defenses your dentist and doctor needs, it's a
Hmm.
little bit different than a hospital. It's a little bit different than perhaps, the hospital at an army base, right? That might have to go to war, right? And it's the same thing. Banks are a lot different than maybe a university, right? So we try to understand that market. And we have
Okay.
some companies that literally they're marketing to basically people who have no cybersecurity. They're buying their first cybersecurity product. And we have
Got
other companies who are literally like helping the Pentagon, stop Chinese and Russian attacks on the daily basis, right? So it's a
it.
wide range of stuff, and I really enjoy the work that they do. Having said that, cyber means so many different things to so many people, right?
Mhm.
Is it the confidentiality of their data? Is it the availability of their data? Tesla doesn't want all their cars to turn off, right? I don't have to hack a car if I can stop a car, things like that. And a lot of times people don't understand that there's all these different facets of people who are trying to steal my data, your data, harm the reputation of a company, and so on. So it's a pretty diverse set of companies that we're in and a
Okay.
very, very diverse set of customers out there.
Got it. Understood. And you said that they're right now, you've invested in 30, etc. What are you seeing? What does the future look like? What's the big future? I used to ask, oh, where do you see 5 years from now? But my goodness, it could be 2 months from now.
Yeah,
But based on what you're saying, the future, what does that look like with AI and
it's
cyber?
really weird because unlike any other type of security business,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody broke into your house or your car, who do you call? You call the police, right? If it's organized crime, you call the FBI. If it's a paratrooper from Russia, you call the Pentagon, right? Everybody knows who to call.
Mm-hmm.
In cyber, we don't know who to call. I got a spam email. Well, you don't call the Pentagon. You don't really call your police either, right? So we have this huge array that American industry is kind of filled to help you and me, small business, large business, kind of fill that gap. But they're basically the front line between the war between us and China and Russia. And it's the cyber war. And if you had anybody who worked threat intelligence for a major intelligence company, or like when I was running Tenable Network Security, we tracked vulnerabilities, and if we got those things wrong, people could literally get hacked, and it would be a nation state type of thing. So we're seeing all that kind of stuff out there. And I can't, let's just say the advantage is on the attacker. Right now, it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who are getting attacked and don't realize it. There's a lot of complexities out there, and people don't realize these complexities. And AI is hopefully going to make it easier, but if we get it wrong, it's going to make it another area of a potential exploitation. So
Mm-hmm.
it's fun times right now.
Yeah. Now let me ask you: are there, in your opinion, do you feel there's some attacks that we shouldn't be concerned about, or do you feel like every attack is important?
Well, it depends what you're trying to protect. And this is really what a lot of people don't do. They don't do sort of their own personal risk assessment and understand that, hostile content can come
Mm-hmm.
from anywhere, right? It can come from a fake email from your child's school. It could be a fake email from the IRS because maybe it's not the IRS. Maybe somebody's pretending to be the IRS, and it keeps changing. Like right now, where people are getting text messages from outside of the country claiming they missed a toll booth
Right.
in Massachusetts somewhere, right? That's all AI generated and, that sort of
Mhm.
thing. So, people need to understand what's important to them and what they need to protect. And they also need to understand that they have a pretty large digital footprint. And, when you look at different generations of people out there, we have different concepts of what is a risky thing to share, what is a risky thing to communicate with online. I would just tell people that, if you think learning English and then learning another language like Spanish, French, Chinese, whatever is interesting. If you're only spending one time in one media, I know a lot of people are like Fox News or CNN, but I'm literally like spend some time on Reddit
Yeah.
versus TikTok versus X versus LinkedIn versus Facebook. And you're going to understand that there's a wide variety of people out there and there's a wide variety of scams targeting you. And those scams could be legit advertisements all the way to hostile
Mhm.
advertisements, right? But they're all targeting you for your eyeballs and your content, or your time. So it's a really hard thing to teach people about, but digital awareness is a big deal.
And Ron, you kind of went into the next question. I always have this call to action question to say, what advice would you give people to become a believer? And if you wanted to add something else or another thing, you can. But what I hear you saying is, just look at different forms of different channels of information. Reddit, like you said, is a great one. I mean, there's so many communities of interest there. Not only look at, like you said, Fox News or CNN, but look at Reddit and X, etc. So I think that is a great place for people to start and something that they can do just naturally when they're scrolling anyway. Is there any other advice you might give our listeners in terms of being more comfortable with AI and cyber, etc.?
Yeah. So the big thing to think about is where's your data? And we have this concept called data care. If you think of healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
there's a wide range of stuff out there. You could be a brain surgeon. You might just know first aid because you're at a swimming pool and you're putting a Band-Aid on something. And it's the same thing with your data. And when you start thinking about it that way, and you start thinking about your life cycle, maybe you have an elderly parent, and at some points they're going to pass, and you got to take care of all of their digital footprint, let alone their bills and that stuff. Maybe you have a child and you're debating, should I do location tracking on the cell phone or throw an AirTag, into their
Right.
backpack? That is a huge thing. We don't think about that as a society. And I've actually counted a lot of different people, a lot of different attitudes with what's right and wrong in those places. If we don't know what's right and wrong in those places, how do we tell our politicians what we want, when it comes from social media or things like that? So I like to think of data care. It's just as important as healthcare. And it really frames this whole conversation of what we're doing as a society going forward, including artificial intelligence. Do we interact with it? What data do we get with? When do they know about what we're doing? Yeah, because we went from telling kids don't get in cars with strangers to
Right.
summoning cars, in Uber and Lyft, on our phone. What are we going to tell kids next? When we said don't do this, but then the AI is going to do it for us. We need to have those kind of conversations.
Exactly. Now, my last guest has a question for you, and that is, what scares you most about AI?
So the thing that scares me the most about AI is eventually this concept of consuming and retraining on bad data. And if anybody's done with aviation, there's a certain type of airplane that can take off vertically, right? And it was the Harrier. And the jet's on the bottom, it's sucking from the top, blowing from the bottom, but it's basically re-ingesting the air and eventually just crashes on the ground. A lot of folks have said they don't have enough data to make a good AI. So we're going to use synthetic data. And there's a lot of very smart people, smarter than me, who make really good synthetic data. But usually when you have, when you're creating garbage and garbage in, you usually have a bad result. So one of the things I'm into is prog rock. And there's a band called Dream Theater. And they had an album where in the far, far future, where things are a little bit like the Hunger Games and stuff like that, the AIs blast out this crappy music and it literally sounds like static. But after 500 years of regurgitating the stuff, that's what they're producing. Everybody's like, wow, that's good. That's what I'm worried about. Another way to think about this is the movie. I just blanked on it. The movie where everybody gets stupider in the future, Idiocracy.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that with the AIs, the more we rely on them to not be creative, but to do thinking for us, It's okay to automate things, but if we're letting people think for us, we all get a little bit stupider. When you look at idiocracy, that could be our AI idiocracy future that we're looking at. So that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting that you talk about the synthetic data, because I actually went to the world's robotic conference in Beijing recently. And I would say 75% of the speakers were talking about that there is not enough data for the projects, the initiatives that they're working on, from defense to healthcare to everything in between, and how they're really focused on trying to create that. And then you're right, there's all kinds of complications and guardrails that have to be thought about in terms of what are you actually creating.
Yeah. And it's like, look, I think a lot of people understand that there's bias in that stuff. And we might jump to racial bias, that kind of thing. But it's, the data is where the data can be biased against people who are 5'4".
Right.
You just don't know what it correlates with and that kind of stuff. And you might not know later till it has rigorous testing and doing that kind of analysis. I personally see this in cyber. So like when we invest in companies that use AI as a form of cybersecurity detection, how did you train the data? Well, a big issue with cyber is I have a new attack every day. Well, if I have new attacks and you're training on old data, how do I detect the new attacks? And it's people classify them and stuff, but it's still a really interesting question, and to see how the founders, answer it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's move into our bonus rapid fire. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You're going to give me the answer that comes first to mind. Number 1, most overrated tech trend.
Oh, I think the debate of, social media policing, like, are we going to make TikTok, US? I think that one's overrated.
Got it. I don't even know where we are with that. I think I saw something like it's coming up soon where it's going to be banned again. I don't know where we are with that.
We do have some people want sovereign technologies in the US. I don't think anybody considers, TikTok a core, except for marketing and entertainment, a core national security, thing. We want our engines made here, right? We don't want our social media necessarily made here.
Right. Okay. Most underhyped AI breakthrough.
I think the most underhyped AI breakthrough is the personification of them. Now, look, I'm against. You'll see it in my videos. Like I talk to the robot, I'll say thank you and stuff like that, right? But I really think the way Star Trek called people the robots and the computer. I have a question, right? It just reinforces that, right? So I don't like, how these things become real and stuff like that. And even when I do my own virtual Ron sort of podcasts and stuff. I hope people realize I'm kind of making fun of this whole, thing.
Well, you're doing a good job at it if it's all comedy. Got it. One book everyone should read on the future or life in general.
I like the 3-Body Problem. So the 3-Body Problem is a science fiction book. It's a 3-book series about aliens who are coming to the U.S. There is a lot of deception in this book. And when I say deception, I'm not talking about like spy versus spy. Again, I don't want to give it away, but it's all about space. And what I would tell you that a lot of what these people see in space is not there. And I'm not really doing it justice, but I will tell people what you see on the internet is not there. I'm not talking about like the dead internet theory and stuff like that, but I'm saying a lot of the content that people experience is being created for them sort of on the fly. And that can be used to deceive them. So I think they should read that book. Definitely look at the series that are on Netflix and stuff like that. But you need to understand that the world that people experience is constantly being created for you.
Wow, that's amazing. The boldest AI prediction you have.
I think that, look, I believe a couple things are going to happen, right? We have not solved cybersecurity. So I do believe you're going to have some of the major AI companies have compromises. I'll get to see it'd be the equivalent of like getting your Google searches, right? Stuff, right? And it might be worse since you're using AI to make business decisions and not just see where, what somebody else says something. There are going to be some massive, I think, issues with it. Now, again, there's been vulnerabilities reported and stuff. I think there's going to be some major things that are going to cause people to reconsider how we're looking at this. And because of that, I think there's going to be a rise in growing, cultivating, training your own internal AI, whether it's for you personally even if it's like a segmented form of Anthropic, or something you run in your own, or something you do in your own business. That's the big thing I think that's going to happen. And if it's not happening now, it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that because, I have founded a couple of AI companies, and my co-founders and I are constantly talking about, do we use tools that are already there? Do we build our own? And, not even from just a cyber standpoint, but even from like pricing, you could be so dependent and you have your own pricing model. And then they could just up and say, you know what, we're just going to raise our prices, triple our prices or quadruple our prices. And then it throws your, profit model out the window. So it is something that I think, particularly as founders, we definitely have to think about, whether we're building our own and have our own on-premise versus using models that are out there.
And it's funny, I say on-premise, instantly date myself as being an old guy. But the reality is that cyber's complex. And if you've looked at any cloud offering from Amazon, from Google, they put confidentiality, integrity, and availability around every API and everything you can do. And there's entire companies out there like Wiz, for example, who are created just to audit that kind of stuff because it's so complex to do. What happens when AI is in that type of complexity? Because right now, the most people are doing with ChatGPT is, they get their monthly subscription, maybe share it, maybe get an enterprise plan, that sort of thing. But as soon as that goes mainstream and it's built within your cloud infrastructure, wow, how do I know that this token's not giving me the synthetic data for the GDPR non-compliant AI? It's crazy. It's crazy. So,
and then also it's like, how do I know? Because there are companies out there like Decompute and other ones where you can pull the public information, but your information doesn't go out. But then it's kind of like, is it really working? Is my information really staying and not going out? So yeah.
That's where I get back to data care, right? So a couple tips, you don't have to be a lawyer to read an end user license agreement, but maybe instead of just hitting scroll and click, why don't you copy, drop that into ChatGPT, drop it into whatever you think, ask it. I probably wouldn't ask ChatGPT to analyze the EULA on OpenAI, but you get where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
Try to get a little bit of sense of what you're clicking yes to. And I still have some purists who they read every update, and it's like, all right, that's interesting. But having said that, it's just, we live in a complex society and everybody needs to understand where their data is, where their data is flowing, and what rights you're giving people to do with your data.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, Ron, I've so enjoyed this conversation. How do people find out more about the projects you're working on, get in touch with you? How do we find you?
So thank you. I enjoyed the conversation. So last name is Gula, Gula. Website's gula.tech, so gula.tech. You can see our videos there, points to YouTube. We do a lot on LinkedIn. We comment, do stuff like that. But all of our portfolio companies, what my wife Cindy and I have talked about with data care, it's all there. And look, we're happy to engage people, on X, on Reddit, on YouTube. And, if we're going to have to, engage the AI soon in a fifth column, I'm here for you.
Absolutely amazing. Well, thank you so much. And everyone, please go check him out. Check out his videos. They are amazing. And it makes me want to put animation in everything that I do. But I've enjoyed the conversation, Ron. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Until next time, lead with AI.
Thanks for tuning in to Lead with AI. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring the cutting-edge innovations shaping AI across the public and private sectors. Until then, keep leading with AI.